Every year, hundreds of thousands of pets are lost or stolen, leaving behind devastated families. It doesn't have to be this way. PediMark microchips store all the information you need to get your pet home safely. No need for that sometimes stressful trip to the vet. Visit PediMark.com today and a qualified microchip implanter can visit your home to microchip your pet in comfort. Quick, easy and safe. PediMark, helping your best friend get home. PediMark, proud sponsors of Pets for Life.
Hello and welcome to a special aquatic episode of Pets for Life. This week we have the opportunity to take a close look at fish. We will be providing potential and existing owners tips, advice and information that will ensure optimum health for your fish. The UK, with a population of over 60 million, is also home to almost 150 million ornamental fish. That's an average of around 2.5 fish per person. This figure is inflated by hobbyists who own more than 100 fish each. But it's clear that those who own fish are enthusiastic and will care for many fish at one time. Here are some top care topics. There are some major areas you need to consider when purchasing a fish. The basics are aquarium, diet, species, lifespan, health and finance. Once you have researched and planned your aquarium, you will need to speak to an expert to ensure that you don't cause your fish any unnecessary harm. We met up with Keith Davenport from the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association to find out more.
We're a trade association and we were formed in 1991. We've got 750 members. We represent their interests from very local issues through to global issues. And we attend meetings, we respond to consultations, we provide training, codes of conduct and care sheets and the like. Fish are excellent pets for families of all types and for people of all ages. They are interesting, they're relaxing to watch. They're simple to keep if you follow a few clear and simple rules, and they're colourful. They form a spectacular centrepiece to front rooms or to gardens. It's a really good introduction for children into a whole wide range of wildlife and animal care issues. You need to consider when you're buying an aquarium the size of aquarium you want. The bigger the aquarium, the better. It's easier to keep bigger volumes of water to the standard that the fish require. But when you're also considering that, think about the space in the home and certainly always remember that whatever you put the aquarium on has to bear that weight for the whole life of the aquarium. Think about where the electricity is, preferably, make sure the electricity is remote from anywhere where you can get water into it, and make sure you can get the water to and from the aquarium, because you'll need to do things like water changes. If you're considering a pond, you've got to think about sunlight, because the plants that you use will need that. Not too much shading, because that will prevent the plants growing, and it will put leaves into the pond, and that can cause problems. And also just safety, making sure that nobody's children can get unrestricted access to it.
Fish are frequently used as focal points in rooms, with a beautiful tank and collection of exotic looking fish. Fish from all around the world can be safely kept in the UK, providing the correct procedures are followed. Clean water, salt levels, correct filtration and appropriate temperatures must all be maintained to achieve a beautiful and healthy life for your fish. Sue Huggett at King British told us more.
Before you even start to buy fish, you need to consider how you're going to look after them, what sort of environment you can keep them in, and that will determine the size of the tank that you can afford to start with, but also that will fit into your home environment. You need to have the tank out of direct sunshine so that you can keep the temperature at a constant level, out of drafts and vibrations. So you need to think about where you're going to put the tank to start with. Decide, therefore, how big a tank that you can have, and that will determine the type and size of fish that you can stock and the number of fish that you can stock. The easiest things to keep, I would suggest, are goldfish, really, but primarily because they're not in heated water. So the simplest form of aquarium that you'd be likely to keep indoors would probably be a goldfish tank. You still need a filter because you need to keep the water aerated and clean, but you don't need to heat it. So goldfish are quite robust, quite sturdy, quite easy to look after. They can grow reasonably large, so be careful about your stocking density. And I would always suggest to understock your tank to start with. And it might look a bit empty to start with, but it's much better to start slowly with just a few fish and then gradually add a few more than go whole hog at the beginning and have half of them die, which is people get terribly upset, as you can imagine. And from an animal welfare point of view, it's not a good idea. So start slowly and start simply. If you want something a bit more exotic, perhaps, then you'd go for a freshwater tropical tank. Now, then you need to incorporate a heater because you need to keep the water slightly warmer than normal UK ambient temperature. So that's something else to consider as to whether you have an electricity supply that's reliable. If you're living in the countryside and you suffer from power cuts, then maybe that's not such a good idea. You can have a disaster. Then there are lots of species that you can choose from that are very exotic looking but are relatively simple to keep. So you have things like guppies, which come in a huge variety of colour. Different types of tetras, neon tetras are very popular. You can have swordtails, mollies, a wide assortment of fish to choose from. You also need to consider whether the fish species will get on with one another, because you don't really want to put carnivorous fish that eat other fish, in with a mixed tank. Otherwise it might be all a bit nature red in tooth and claw. So be careful which fish you mix together, and obviously your specialist supplier will be able to help you with that. But it's also good to go online, and I think with children in particular, if you can go online and do a bit of research first, then that's a really good thing to do before you get to the shop. It stops impulse purchasing, which is also a good thing. So you need to do a bit of homework. You need to find out the water that you have in your area. Is it hard water, is it soft water? Because that can have an influence on the type of fish that you can successfully keep.
Fish are living animals, and you need to maintain an environment that's suitable for them to live. And manage the water, and that might mean regular tests and just water changes to make sure that the water remains in as good a condition as possible, to make sure that the health of the fish isn't compromised by it. Cleaning the front glass to make sure there's no algae on there so that you can see into the aquarium more clearly helps. Occasionally managing the filter, washing off, not with tap water, but very gently with water from a water change from the aquarium. You definitely need a filter, because the filter is going to reprocess any waste that are in the water and make the water safe for the fish. You also need chemical test kits so that you can monitor and manage the water quality to make it suitable for the fish. Water test kits are not an optional extra, they're an essential purchase. But always with this, it will vary from aquarium to aquarium and pond to pond, and so you're always best asking your OATA retailer for specific advice that's relevant to your aquarium or pond.
You need to set your tank up because the tank needs to mature for at least a week, better a fortnight if possible, before you actually add any fish to it. So having decided what you're going to do, be aware that once you fill an aquarium with water, it gets very heavy. So make sure you have a robust stand. A lot of aquaria come with their own stands, which does add a bit of cost to your initial purchase, but it's a good idea because it will be made for the job. Otherwise, ensure that you've got something that is sturdy enough to hold a full tank. That's really important. The tank itself, there are lots of reputable manufacturers to choose from, so whatever suits your own particular environment, the decor of the room and things like that, you can be quite picky about that kind of thing nowadays. There are a lot of good tanks on the market. The important things are then what you put inside it. You do need a substrate at the bottom, which can either be sand or gravel, small stones, something like that. And then you can decide how you want the tank to look. So children sometimes like things like sunken ships and things for the fish to swim in and out of. It's good to have something like that, not necessarily a sunken ship. You can have rocks and things that are more natural looking. But so the fish can hide from one another if they want to. You do get a little bit of territorial situations in a tank sometimes, and it's good for some of the fish to be able to sneak off and have a bit of time on their own. So you do need some bits and pieces in the tank. You can have real plants if you want to, or you can have artificial plants. Artificial plants will look the same forever. They may not be quite so aesthetically pleasing, but they don't die and go gunky either. So you can choose between the two, whatever your own preference is. You need your heater, unless you're keeping goldfish, you probably need a heater, so that's important. And the filter is extremely important. The filter is what keeps the water clean. If you think of fish being kept in a single environment, everything that they do and are involved with are contained within that environment. So it's like us, the air that we walk around in, they're swimming around in the water. So it has to be clean. They go to the toilet in the water, so that has to be cleaned away. And a filter does that job for you, partially at least. So you need a good filter. You need to make sure it's working the whole time. And you need to make sure that occasionally you boost it with friendly bacteria, because it's the friendly bacteria that actually eat the waste that's in the tank. And that's really important. The other way of keeping the water quality good is that you must consider doing a partial water change once a week, once a fortnight, something like that. And the way you do that is you will either use a tube or a siphon, something like that, and suck out of the tank about a third or a quarter of the water every week or every fortnight and replace it with fresh dechlorinated water. That way you're removing a lot of the waste, you're diluting the waste, and the fish will have a cleaner environment to swim around in. And if you keep doing that, the chances are that the water won't go green, it won't go cloudy, and you'll stay on top of things. And it's much better than trying to solve a problem later on.
Join us after the break to meet some more fascinating fish. See you in 3.
The science behind successful fish keeping is our business. Healthier, happier fish, and lovely clean water. But our passion is being part of the delight, fascination and magic that fish keeping brings to families. Experience the wonderment and let King British help you along the way. If you would like to know more about our products, please visit our website, kingbritish.co.uk.
What a day. Problems at work, traffic on the way home. Want to know more about keeping fish? Then contact your local Owata retailer or visit www.ornamentalfish.org.
Every year, hundreds of thousands of pets are lost or stolen, leaving behind devastated families. It doesn't have to be this way. PediMark microchips store all the information you need to get your pet home safely. No need for that sometimes stressful trip to the vet. Visit PediMark.com today and a qualified microchip implanter can visit your home to microchip your pet in comfort. Quick, easy and safe. PediMark, helping your best friend get home.
Barney loved his owner. He thought his owner would always love him. Hungry, frightened, and alone, Barney is just one of thousands of animals taken in by the Blue Cross every year because nobody wants them. Will you give just £2 a month to the Blue Cross? Will you help save the life of a homeless animal like Barney? He relies on us now, but we rely on you. £2 a month can help us go on caring day after day until we find just the right home for Barney, however long it takes.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Okay then.
Sorry, we'll look at the...
Okay, bye-bye.
Please help. Visit our website and give £2 a month. We're counting on your support.
The science behind successful fish keeping is our business. Healthier, happier fish, and lovely clean water. But our passion is being part of the delight, fascination and magic that fish keeping brings to families. Experience the wonderment and let King British help you along the way. If you would like to know more about our products, please visit our website, kingbritish.co.uk.
The basic costs involved in starting to own fish can vary quite considerably. Initial recommendations are that you start with a very low number of cold water species before building up to a higher volume with more complex requirements. A basic setup will cost you around £200. If this is something you can afford, then it's time to start considering future costs.
In aquariums, well-kept aquariums, fish live a lot longer than their wild cousins would. So, you know, it's all about remembering fish are animals just as much as a dog or a cat is, and looking after what they need in their environment and the suitable environment that they require to live healthy and happy lives. But patience is the key issue, and with stocking fish, keep the water quality right, and if you're in doubt, don't stock extra fish. A little bit of patience makes it quite simple.
Feeding the fish is possibly one of the most exciting parts about keeping fish, because you see them suddenly become very animated. And you'll find it's almost like Pavlov's dog. When you walk to a tank, they will quite often come to the surface in expectation that you're going to feed them, which is quite nice really. It's a bit of feedback. I think with feeding a fish, the most important thing is not to overfeed them, and that's the most common problem that people have when first starting to keep aquaria, is the overfeeding of their fish, especially when their children are involved, because it is exciting, and you sprinkle the fish on the top and the fish will come up excitedly to eat. But if you overdo it and you give them more food than they can manage, as we were talking about before, it's in their environment, it's floating around, it's starting to decay, and that's really not a good thing. So the rule with feeding is little and often. That's the most important thing. And to pick a food that is as good a quality as possible. If the food is very digestible, then less will come out the back of the fish as waste, and that also then will help to keep the water quality good. The most important thing about King British food is the quality of the ingredients that we put into the products. To start with, we use something called hydrolyzed fish protein, which sounds very chemical but isn't at all. It's just the highest quality fish material that we can buy. And the importance of that is that it makes the food extremely digestible. And that means that the fish can utilise the food that's in the product as fully as possible, and less comes out its back end as waste, which means it's not going to make the water cloudy, make the water dirty, make algae grow in the water. So it's very important from the point of view of the fish's health, but also from the point of view of keeping the water quality good. We've also just recently developed a completely natural fish flake, where we've taken out all artificial preservatives, colourants and ingredients. So we're leading the industry in that side of the market by making the product as natural as we possibly can. We also add something at King British called an immuno-health booster, which is a natural seaweed extract, and this boosts the fish's natural immunity to diseases. It's important then that that will help the fish to fight off any diseases that it may encounter, keeps the fish happy, healthy, and it will lead a longer and happier life as a consequence.
Overfeeding is obviously a problem, because if the food remains uneaten, then it will break down and rot and release toxins into the water that will affect the fish. The easiest way to overcome that is feed appropriate foods in the appropriate quantities, and make sure that none remains uneaten. If it does, take it out, and then that can't be a problem. But you should pick up that there's a water problem developing if you're doing your regular water quality tests.
It's not difficult to clean out a fish tank, but a bit of preparation does help. You need a couple of buckets, and if you have high quality flooring, then it might be as well to put down some newspaper or plastic sheeting to start with as a precautionary measure, because water always seems to make a bit of a mess. What you need is a long tube or a siphon, and that you can just siphon the water off either from the top of the tank, obviously you have to be careful not to suck any fish up the tube, or if you're even better at this, if you're using a siphon in particular, it's very good to hoover the gravel, because that way you'll pick up the algae and the waste products from the bottom of the tank as well. And what you need to do is to reduce the volume of the water from a full tank to by a third or a quarter every week or every fortnight. And that way you don't stress the fish, because they can stay quite happily in the bottom of the tank, but you are diluting the water with fresh, clean water, which makes the tank stay a lot healthier. If you leave it until the tank's going green, which is a really bad idea for lots of reasons, you'll end up having to clean the glass, clean the ornaments, clean the back wall, really clean the gravel, and the fish will get very stressed during that process. So you really need to do this on a regular basis to make sure that the fish don't get too stressed and that everything stays hunky-dory. The other important thing to remember is when you're adding fresh water to the tank, you need to make sure you dechlorinate it first. Tap water in the UK all contains chlorine, and that's very aggressive to a fish's skin. So you need to make sure that you add a dechlorinator to that water and leave it for a little time to take effect before you add it to the tank. And add the water very slowly and very gently, so again that you don't stress the fish as you're pouring it in.
When you're thinking about which fish to keep, you've got several options. In broad terms, you've got cold water freshwater fish like goldfish. Then you've got freshwater tropical fish like neon tetras and guppies. And then moving on, you've got marines where you can have clownfish and corals and the like. Generally speaking, you'd be well advised to start with either cold water fish in aquariums or tropical freshwater fish in aquariums before moving on to marines. Many of the same principles apply, but you need a little bit more care and a bit more experience to make sure that you're successful with marine fish and marine aquariums. Well, fish are just fabulous because you can have the world in your front room, or you can have a really lovely focal point in your garden. And the key issue always to remember is you've got to look after the health of your fish, and to do that, water quality in particular is important. And as I say, when you're beginning and setting up, patience, know what you're buying, know what's required to care for them, and go slowly. If you're in doubt, don't stock more fish, go to your retailer for advice. They're there to give you advice, and they want you to succeed just as much as you want to succeed. In the hobby, you're able to find anything up to 2,000 species, and they come in all shapes and forms, and so you're almost bound to be able to find some species that really grab your attention and your interest, and they can come from coral reefs through to rainforests or to the goldfish for the garden pond. Fish would make a good pet for a home because they're easy to keep, they're colourful, they fit in with your garden, they fit in with your front room or your living room, and they're a focal point for interest, and you know they really are very interesting. Taking fish from the wild is a topic that is often raised, but I think what everybody has to realise is that these fish are caught with the prime intention of keeping them alive. Very few, if any, other industries have that intention when they take fish from the wild. They are, what we pay for them is far in excess of what is paid locally for the same fish used for human food. And in some areas, the impact on the environment is massive in a positive way. So in the Amazon, 70% of the income in some areas is from catching ornamental fish. And when you actually ask the local socioeconomics gurus what would happen otherwise, they say that the forest would be cleared and that would release billions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So the fish are intentionally caught to keep alive, and their welfare is important to the industry. They provide livelihoods in very poor areas of the world where there's no social welfare network to support them in. And if they did go for an alternative livelihood, it could be clearing the rainforests or breaking up the reefs for building material. And if they break the reefs up for building material, then it's very much more destructive than anything we do when we're trying to collect things live. Releasing fish to the wild in this country is an absolute no-no. In fact, it's a no-no for releasing plants into the wild. Fish and plants bought for aquariums or ponds have only one home, and that's in the aquarium or pond environment. They should never, ever be released into the wild. Some of them might become invasive, i.e. they might grow in numbers and cause problems in the environment. But probably the most important thing is that the vast majority of them will die because they're not fit to live in the wild in this country, and they would die of disease or starvation or predation. So while some people might think it's kind to release fish in the wild, in fact it is undoubtedly cruel. On the releasing to the wild, for 10 or 11 years we've had posters on not releasing pet fish, we've had posters on not releasing pond plants, and we were very enthusiastic partners with the government in the Be Plantwise campaign recently. And that's an ongoing campaign, that's not a one-year wonder. It's something that everybody must realise, that releasing anything to the wild is not good. And we also have plastic bags that are sold with that message on, that anything bought in this plastic bag should not be released to the wild. I think we care about it because with the fish side of it, it's cruel. And of course, we don't want any harm to come to the environment either. We would, you know, either collecting or in the garden, ponds, we rely on the environment for our livelihood as much as anybody else, and we don't want to harm it or cause other parts of the population any problems. So what you buy for your aquarium and pond should remain there, and it's just in everybody's best interest that that's the way, including the animals, and probably mainly the animals.
So if you need more information about your fish, how to look after them, complementary species that you might add to your tank, if they have ailments, illnesses, any issues that you're concerned about, there's a wealth of information online. We have a website at King British, which is basically kingbritish.co.uk, and on there you can find help with how to add the medications to the water. There's a tank calculator, which you can say which product you want to use, how big your tank is, and it will tell you exactly how much you need to add, just to keep things as simple as possible. There's also a store locator on that website where you just pop in your postcode and it will tell you the most local pet shop or aquatic specialist in your area. And the guys that are working in those stores are very knowledgeable. They know an awful lot about their subject. They're passionate about their subject. So do pop down and see them. You can take digital photographs of what your fish look like, or you can explain what's happening in the tank, and they have a wealth of knowledge that would help you to solve any problem that you may have.
We hope you have enjoyed hearing from our experts today and look forward to you joining us next week on Pets for Life. Bye for now.